From behind the camera to the front lines of history, we document the truly extraordinary. Prepare to immerse yourself in the definitive moments and visual records that permanently altered our global landscape.
You out here this late for what? Windows down, parked in the dark, look pretty suspicious, don't you think?
I'm on my way home, officer. Engine's off, hands are right here. I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, then why you look so nervous, huh? Step out for me, come on.
I'm not nervous. I'm just trying to get home. I'd appreciate you letting go.
Door's locked, what are you hiding?
Bodycam footage shows flashing blue and red lights just after 12:17 a.m. on April 14, 2019, along Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, NW in Atlanta. Inside a parked vehicle sits a calm black driver, Caleb Johnson. He is 46 years old and a senior law enforcement commander. He follows every instruction carefully while a rookie officer slowly turns a simple encounter into something more serious than it needs to be. Simple questions become firm commands. Assumptions take the place of proper procedure. By the time backup is called, the balance of power has already shifted, setting off a chain of events that would end one career while quietly protecting another. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The officer on scene is Evan Mercer, 24 years old, fresh out of the academy and still within his first year on patrol. His approach is quick and stiff. He keeps his flashlight pointed at the driver's hands longer than necessary, positions his body square to the driver's door, and begins speaking before fully coming to a stop. Mercer wants the stop to look clean, something he can defend later. In his mind, being decisive means showing authority. He believes hesitation makes an officer look weak. Engine off. Keys on the dash, Mercer says. The driver follows the order without saying a word. Mercer doesn't acknowledge the compliance. The man behind the wheel is Caleb Johnson. He is not new to traffic stops. He has spent more than 20 years in law enforcement. Within his department, he is known for handling internal discipline cases and setting field training standards. He has supervised patrol officers, written policy memos, and approved corrective actions. He understands how stops like this change when an officer decides early on that the situation needs to justify itself. Window all the way down, the window lowers. Mercer leans in slightly, scanning the inside of the car, the back seat, the floorboard, every detail. His questions come fast and sharp, stacked one after another. Why are you parked here this late? Who owns this vehicle? Where are you coming from? Caleb Johnson answers each question clearly and calmly. His hands remain visible, resting on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. He doesn't ask why he was stopped. He doesn't challenge the officer's tone. He waits for the next instruction. Mercer walks a slow circle around the car, eyes fixed on the tires, the license plate, the seam of the trunk. When he returns, his voice is harder. You got any weapons in the car? No, sir. Anything illegal? No, sir. Mercer pauses, then asks again slower and louder as if repeating the question might change the answer. It doesn't. Johnson's voice stays steady. Am I being detained, officer? Mercer ignores the question and asks for license and registration. Johnson provides both, moving carefully and announcing each motion before making it. I'm reaching for my wallet now, he says. Mercer nods once, eyes locked on him, then steps back toward the cruiser. The body cam records radio chatter as Mercer runs the information. No alerts, no warrants. Everything comes back clean. Mercer does not end the stop. He returns with a different posture, shoulders squared, chin raised. Step out of the vehicle. Johnson looks straight ahead. For what reason, officer? Mercer tightens his jaw. I'm asking you to step out. Johnson opens the door and steps onto the pavement. He stands upright, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clearly visible. Mercer positions him near the front of the cruiser. Turn around, Mercer says. Johnson complies. Mercer does not place him in handcuffs. He conducts a quick pat-down, firmer than necessary. When he finishes, he does not say the stop is over. Instead, he keeps talking. What do you do for work? I'm in law enforcement. Where? I'm a commander with... Mercer cuts him off. I didn't ask for your rank. Johnson stops speaking. Mercer steps away and calls for backup. His radio voice stays calm and controlled, but the call is unnecessary for what's happening. He labels it as officer safety anyway. Back up to my location, Mercer says. Johnson waits with his eyes forward. Cars pass now and then. A bus rolls by with a low rumble. The street stays mostly quiet. Mercer uses the time to press with more questions, going back over things Johnson already answered, searching for contradictions that aren't there. Each time Johnson responds, Mercer twists the wording again. You sure about that? That's not what I'm asking. Answer yes or no. Johnson stays steady. Yes, sir. No, sir. Minutes drag on. Then the sound of another cruiser comes closer. Mercer straightens up again and glances toward the street. Johnson notices the change but doesn't move. Headlights flood the scene as the second unit pulls in behind Mercer's car. The backup officer steps out and pauses, taking in what he sees. The driver is standing free. No cuffs, no ticket being written, no clear reason in front of him. The backup officer looks at Johnson first, then at Mercer. What's the situation? He asks. Mercer starts to respond. Johnson stays quiet. The body cam catches the moment right before anything shifts the pause, the quick evaluation, and the recognition that starts to form. The officer who arrived is Sergeant Daniel Kovac, 41 years old, a field supervisor with nearly 20 years on patrol and experience running night watch. He doesn't rush in. He's handled enough stops to sense when something feels wrong before anyone even speaks. Kovac stops at the edge of the headlights, letting his eyes move slowly, with no panic. He notices how the vehicles are positioned, the fact that there are no restraints, and that Mercer isn't holding any paperwork. Then he looks at Caleb Johnson again. Longer this time, Johnson stands still, relaxed but formal. His hands are visible. His eyes stay forward. What's going on? Kovac asks. Mercer answers quickly. Suspicious vehicle. Driver was uncooperative. Johnson turns his head slightly. I've complied with every instruction. Mercer snaps back right away. I didn't give you permission to speak. Kovac lifts one hand, small but firm. It's fine. Let him talk. Johnson keeps his tone even. I was parked. He told me to step out. I did. There hasn't been an explanation beyond that. Kovac nods once, then looks back at Mercer. What's the violation? Mercer hesitates. He was parked in a high-crime area after midnight. That's not a violation. Kovac says. Mercer shifts his weight. I'm still investigating. Kovac glances at the patrol car, then back to Johnson. Sir, do you have identification on you? Johnson reaches slowly into his jacket pocket. I do. I'm going to hand it to you. He pulls out his credentials and extends them without stepping forward. Kovac takes them, looks down briefly, then looks back up at Johnson's face. His expression changes not in a dramatic way, but enough that it's noticeable. He looks at the credentials again, this time more carefully. Then he straightens. Mercer notices. What is it? Kovac doesn't answer right away. He hands the credentials back to Johnson using both hands. Yes, sir, Kovac says. The word hits differently than anything said so far. Mercer frowns. Sir? Kovac turns slightly toward Mercer. This is Commander Caleb Johnson. Mercer blinks. Commander of what? Johnson answers calmly himself. Regional operations. For a moment, nobody speaks. Traffic moves past in the distance. The cruiser lights keep flashing. Mercer lets out a short, dismissive laugh. That doesn't change anything. Kovac keeps his voice steady. It does. Mercer's tone hardens. I'm running this stop. Kovac looks straight at him now. No, you're not. He gestures toward Johnson. You called for backup for officer safety. I'm here. I'm assessing. Mercer opens his mouth like he wants to argue, then closes it again. He looks from Johnson to Kovac and back. Johnson stays quiet. Kovac turns to Johnson. Commander, were you told why you were stopped? No, Johnson says. Were you written a ticket for anything? No. Were you told you were under arrest? No. Kovac nods once more, then faces Mercer. Then why is he still standing here? Acts of rebody present to Conson. Mercer answers slower this time. I was just making sure. Making sure of what? Kovac asks. Mercer has nothing. Kovac lets out a controlled breath. You don't detain someone just to make sure when you have no cause. Mercer's shoulders tighten. He challenged my authority. Johnson speaks calmly. I asked if I was being detained. Kovac looks at Mercer. That's not a challenge. Mercer looks away, jaw clenched. Kovac steps half a pace closer to Mercer, lowering his voice but not softening it. You need to end this. Mercer shakes his head. Not yet. Kovac straightens. Yes. Now. Mercer turns toward his cruiser, then back again, like he's weighing his options. He reaches for his radio, then stops. For the first time since the stop started, he looks unsure. Kovac turns to Johnson again. Commander, you're not being detained. You're free to go. Johnson nods. Understood. Johnson turns toward his car, and Mercer steps forward. Hold on. Kovac reacts instantly. That's enough. Mercer freezes. Kovac moves between them, placing himself there on purpose. You've already overstepped. Mercer's voice rises. You're taking his side. Kovac answers without missing a beat. I'm following procedure. Johnson opens his car door. He pauses and looks back briefly, not at Mercer, but at Kovac. Yes, sir. Kovac replies. Johnson gets in and closes the door. The engine starts. He signals, pulls away smoothly, and disappears down Joseph E. Boone Boulevard. Kovac watches until the car is out of sight. Then he turns fully toward Mercer. What was that? Mercer shrugs, like he's defending himself. I was doing my job. Aldous 7 Mini. Kovac shakes his head. No, you weren't. He gestures toward the cruiser camera. Everything you did is on record. Mercer scoffs. So what? So this becomes a problem for you. Mercer crosses his arms. He shouldn't get special treatment. Kovac answers immediately. He got the treatment he should have had from the start. Mercer looks away again, breathing faster now. Kovac keys his radio. Supervisor to my location. Mercer's head snaps back. Why? Because this doesn't end here. They stand under the flashing lights in silence, waiting. And somewhere else in the city, a commander makes a phone call. The supervisor arrives without hurry, parking behind the two cruisers and stepping into the spill of red and blue lights. He doesn't speak right away. He watches first. He takes in Mercer's posture, Kovac's calm stance, and the empty stretch of road where Johnson's car disappeared just minutes earlier. Who called it in? The supervisor asks. I did, Kovac says. Mercer shifts. I had it under control. The supervisor looks at Mercer, but doesn't respond to that. What happened? He asks. Kovac keeps it short and factual. He walks through the stop from the moment he arrived. No attitude, no extra commentary, just the order of events. When he finishes, the supervisor nods once. Bodycam running the whole time? The supervisor asks. Yes, Kovac says. Both units. The supervisor turns to Mercer. At any point did you reconsider the stop? Mercer hesitates. Suspicious activity. That's not a violation. The supervisor says. Mercer starts to speak, then stops. He looks past the supervisor, jaw tight. The supervisor glances at Kovac. You recognized him? Yes, sir. The supervisor nods again. I know the name. Mercer looks up fast. You do? The supervisor finally faces him fully. Yes, and that's not the point. He gestures toward the roadway. Whether you knew who he was or not, this stop didn't meet the threshold. Mercer exhales hard. So what? I'm just supposed to let people sit wherever they want? You're supposed to be able to explain your cause, the supervisor says. You're supposed to de-escalate when there's nothing to escalate. Mercer looks down, then back up. He talked back. XNA talked back. The supervisor doesn't raise his voice. He asked a legal question. There's a pause. The supervisor turns slightly, angling his body away from Mercer. He keys his radio and requests a unit number and a timestamp. Then he stops and looks at Kovac. Walk me through the credential moment, he says. Kovac explains how Johnson handed over his identification, how he checked it, how he confirmed it, and how it matched what he already knew. The supervisor listens and nods as Kovac talks. When Kovac finishes, the supervisor turns back to Mercer. At any point, the supervisor asks, Did you reconsider the stop? Mercer doesn't answer. At any point, the supervisor repeats. Did you think you might be wrong? Mercer swallows. I didn't want to look weak. The supervisor lets those words hang in the air for a moment. Then he speaks calmly. Authority isn't about looking strong, he says. It's about knowing when you don't actually have it. He gestures toward the cruiser. Sit tight. Mercer stiffens. Am I being suspended? Not right now, the supervisor says. Right now, you're being removed from patrol. Mercer's shoulders drop slightly as he walks to the car. He opens the door and sits inside, staring straight ahead. The supervisor turns to Kovac. I'll handle the paperwork. I need your report by end of shift. Yes, sir, Kovac says. The supervisor nods once and heads back toward his vehicle. Before he leaves, he pauses and looks at Kovac again. You did the right thing, he says. Kovac nods but doesn't reply. The supervisor drives off. The flashing lights fade. The street settles back into silence. Kovac stands by his cruiser for another moment, then reaches up and shuts off his own lights. He leans against the hood, exhales, and looks down the road where Johnson disappeared. Several miles away, Caleb Johnson turns onto a quiet side street and parks. He sits in the car for a moment, then reaches for his phone. He makes one call. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't focus on emotions. He lists actions. I was stopped. No citation. No cause. Backup arrived. A supervisor was called. There's a pause while he listens. Yes, Johnson says. I'll document it in the morning. He ends the call and sits for another moment before driving on. Back on Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, Kovac finishes his notes. He types slowly and carefully, sticking to only what he saw and heard. When he's done, he signs the report and submits it. As he closes the laptop, a thought crosses his mind, not about the stop itself, but about what happened next. A small action that would later be mentioned in internal briefings and training talks. When Kovac first handed Johnson's credentials back before the supervisor arrived, before Mercer fully understood what was happening, Kovac did something quiet but intentional. He straightened his posture, he lifted his hand, fingers lined up, palm angled the right way. It wasn't for attention, it wasn't for the camera. It was a salute not just because of rank, but because Kovac recognized something real. Control, restraint, and command presence under pressure. Nobody talked about it in the moment. Mercer didn't even understand what he was seeing. The second passed quickly, almost like nothing happened. But the Bodycam captured it clearly. And later, in a review room, paused and replayed frame by frame, that one gesture became the sharpest dividing line in the whole incident. One officer escalated to prove himself. Another recognized real authority and shut it down. And by then, the consequences were already moving. The review begins 3 days later in a small conference room at headquarters. No press, no announcements, just a supervisor, internal affairs, and a monitor playing Bodycam footage from multiple angles. The room stays silent as the stop plays out exactly the way it happened. No narrator, no extra comments. Just timestamps, audio, and the raw footage. The questions come after. Why was the stop started? What violation was actually stated? Why was the driver ordered out of the car? Why was backup called? At first, Mercer answers carefully. He talks about training. He repeats officer safety. But when they keep pressing him, his explanations get smaller and tighter. He falls back on the same phrases the camera already captured. And every time the footage proves him wrong, the room stops. They rewind. They play it again. Slowly, clearly. No way to dodge what's on screen. At no point does the discussion center on Caleb Johnson's rank. That part is purposely removed from the review. The focus stays on behavior, tone, escalation, and the choices made in real time. They point out all the chances Mercer had to end the stop and didn't. They highlight the moment he treats a legal question like disrespect. They flag the backup request as unjustified. By the end of the session, the outcome is obvious. Mercer is placed on administrative leave, pending termination. Because he is still on probation, the process moves faster. There's no arbitration, no long appeal. The paperwork moves quickly. 2 weeks later, Mercer resigns. The department sends out a short internal memo. No names, no drama, It stresses training standards and procedural compliance. Mandatory refresher sessions are scheduled for patrol units, using anonymized footage from the incident, and the salute gets shown during those sessions. It's paused, replayed, not as symbolism, but as instruction. Sergeant Daniel Kovac goes back to his normal assignment. He's asked to help train new officers not as punishment, but as an example. He never speaks publicly about the stop. When people ask him privately, he keeps it simple. It was a bad stop. It didn't need to go that far. Caleb Johnson files his report the next morning. It's factual, timed, and detailed. He doesn't ask for punishment. He doesn't go to the media. He sends it through official channels and moves on. Weeks later, he's invited to sit in on a policy discussion about nighttime patrol discretion. He listens more than he talks. When he does speak, his words are controlled. Authority, he says, shows up in restraint. The incident never becomes a headline. But inside the department, it spreads quietly, shared in briefings, used in training, referenced during evaluations. Officers talk about it without ever saying names. Remember that Boone Boulevard stop? Someone will say, and everyone understands. One officer tried to take control without cause. Another recognized real command without being told. And a system, briefly exposed, corrected itself the only way it knows how, on record, on camera, and without applause.
In a fast-paced world full of endless information, every authentic record forms a crucial narrative. Our primary mission is to dissect these narratives to reveal the undeniable truth. Thank you for trusting us and actively joining this analytical journey.